Welcome to the Pipeline Online Podcast. In this episode, we have Eric Anderson. Eric's the Executive Director of SIMSA, Saskatchewan Industrial and Mining Suppliers Association. They're holding their 11th Annual Energy Suppliers Forum in Regina on October 8th, and have also been tasked with setting up the nuclear supply chain in Saskatchewan. Hello, folks. Brian Zinchuk and Bronwyn Eyre here with the Pipeline Online Podcast. And today we bring on Eric Anderson of SIMSA. Eric, I just lost your video.
What? Hang on.
It was just there.
I was just here.
Hold on.
What the heck? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Can't see you.
Hang on. Let's play this. Let's play this.
There.
How's that?
There we go. All right.
Nice to see you,
Folks,
Eric.
this is Eric. We've got Eric Anderson here with Saskatchewan Industrial Mining Suppliers Association. I've known Eric for quite a while, and I'll ask you to introduce yourself, please.
Well, you just introduced me.
Well, a little bit
And
more
in the
than that.
video and then live, and now you want... Okay. Hi, I'm Eric Anderson. I'm the Executive Director of the Saskatchewan Industrial and Mining Suppliers Association, or SIMSA for short. The I in SIMSA is bigger than the M, and we're the industrial piece people forget about. Because it's mining, but it's also industrial. So that's all the roads and streets and power lines and oil and gas and nuclear and all that. So people tend to focus on the mining, but that's probably only 25% of our members' work.
So I can't listen to the Braze show without hearing your ads at least 3 times.
Well, there you go.
So, explain exactly what you're doing with all that, and what your role at SIMSA has been in industry.
Well, so SIMSA, the simple thing is we help our members sell stuff, right? We connect the supply chain, the people who do the goods and services to make everything work or build it or maintain it, with the people buying it. So whether in the oil sector, whether that's a CNRL or a Whitecap, or on the nuclear side, it's a GE or a Westinghouse, or on the potash side, it's a BHP or Nutrien, or on the uranium, it's chemical, right? Or the groups like that. We bring them together. We also help them to sell better by providing kind of MBA level courses in salesmanship, or salespersonship, I should say, and things like that.
What's the it's lovely to have you, by the way, Eric. And it's
Good
kind
to
of
see
a
you
blast
again,
from
miss.
the past, because we had a lot to do with each other at one
Yeah.
time. Always a pleasure. I know one of your concerns always was, and I'm assuming continues to be, the buy local aspect of what you do and what you hope companies will do when they come into the province. So take, for example, a BHP, and I just pull that out of the air because, recent big player, and your hope always on SIMSA's behalf is that they will buy from Saskatchewan suppliers. And so I guess what's your report card on how that's going for Saskatchewan suppliers and companies coming in, what you've achieved and are achieving in terms of that buy local aspect?
Well, let's start with BHP, since you brought it up. So we do we kind of do the vet for local content for them. Through our database, people, if they're on our database, because to be a member of SIMSA, you have to have a permanent physical office in the province and at least 3 full-time employees in the province. So we're kind of set a threshold for what does it mean to be in Saskatchewan? Where have you, to the point where you've actually invested here? So the permanent physical office kind of does it.
Mm-hmm.
So for BHP, they use our member database to vet for local content on the broader piece. There's another one just for the tied into Humboldt, and they've done well over 70,000 searches on our membership list over the past couple of years. So you don't make up 70,000 searches, right? That's a lot. And then on the spending side, there's been well over $1 billion spent locally. Is it a lower percentage? Yes, than some of the others, but this is also a new build. So new builds tend to be less locally because there's big pieces brought in from all over the place that are, you can't really set up a shop to build something like that once, and then what do you do with it? So there's a lot of first time build stuff that ends up out of province. But then during operations, things change dramatically.
Right.
And they've even stated that during our events, that once they're in operations, things start swinging more to the local spend, which is kind of maybe like more along the lines of what, say, Nutrien's doing, right? I think they're doing up to 80% local, and Cameco does a ton in the north locally.
So,
So overall, you'd give them a good grade.
I noticed you mentioned a bunch of mining companies here. I didn't hear you mention anything about coal. Do you do much in the coal industry?
Well, so our members support like refurbishments and repairs for Westmoreland, and Westmoreland does some work with our members. We don't do anything major with them. They're more through the mining forum, which we do with the Mining Association every year, and with Trade and Export.
What about the oil patch? I was just at a conference here this afternoon or this morning, which I stepped out of, and I'll be going back to. The Southeast Tech Hub is holding its ICE conference, and I was sitting at a table with Jim Wilson, who happens to be a member of SIMSA.
And he's on our board now
for Wiltech, and he was speaking your praises not only to me, but also SIMSA was spoken of highly of from the stage as well. In the oil patch, what exactly do you do, and what do you got coming up here in October?
Well, in the oil patch, they fall into the eye in SIMSA, the eye of SIMSA too. How about that? There's a good little pun for you. We support the supply chain work. So on October 8th, we have an event in Regina, the annual, I think it's the 11th annual this year, in a Saskatchewan Suppliers Energy Forum, where the supply chain meets with a lot of the oil producers and the oil and gas producers in the province. Our members, the oil supply chain isn't just all drill rigs, right? There's a lot of things that go on with the building of that and construction of, like I said, Graham and Park de Roche doing some coatings, and or Canadian Tank and Vessel. Well, there's another one though, but they're obviously, they look more like oil, right? But you can Q-line trucking. I mean, none of that stuff moves around without a truck. Well, there you go. Look at the right on top of things here. Valen, PTI, and Janie welding, maybe building pieces. They're needed. So. We're the supply chain to that. And the neat thing is that it's the same people doing oil and gas as it is doing uranium, as it is doing potash, as it will be doing nuclear down the road. It's the same group of people that is doing slightly different work, but welding is still welding at the end of the day.
Right. So the event that you're talking about here, which now I understand that tomorrow the price is double. So if you want to register, go to simsa.ca to register for this event if you have any room left.
Yeah, on our events page, you'll see a bunch of stuff, and you scroll down a little bit with your eyeballs, and you'll see the energy forum, and to click on that, and then you can register for the event online and come out on the 8th. And it's there's no keynote speech. There's going to be somebody from government, which was this lady named Air for a while, but then I don't know where she went. Oh, there she is. And then but so we'll have somebody else there this year. I'm not sure who it's going to be, and it's one of those fun things you don't really find out sometimes to the last minute, and we go with that. But 90% of the presentations are on what do we need to buy and how do you sell to us.
Yeah,
that's what we want.
I've attended pretty much every time you've had this, and honestly, there's about 4 or 5 events throughout the year, and this is one of the highlights, especially if you actually are trying to sell your product. You get a chance to actually talk to some of the oil companies and some of the buyers, and like they usually have buyers from Federated Co-op, for instance, that are there, and in the past they've had like Enbridge and TC Energy and whatnot.
Strathcona and Saturn and such this year, and we don't, SIMSA in its history, we've done one social event, and that was our 10th anniversary. So it was 3 years ago. There was some cap there last year in that photo. Like our events, people are there to buy something or they're to sell something. There's not this awkward, there's no social, they're not social events masquerading as business. We don't have this point of like, oh, blah, 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 blah. How's your wife and kids? Hey, you want to buy this? There's not that awkward transition. It's like, you're there to be sold to, and you're there to sell. Yeah. That's what this is. Yeah. And so we get stuff done. And I mean, that's probably why our membership has been growing. I mean, you look at our membership growth line, we're up to, it's been almost a straight line since we began it. So we're at 371 members today, probably 36,000 employees in that. And there's over $17.5 billion worth of sales in there. I mean, it's a big chunk of the economy because it's not just mining, it's oil and gas and it's power and it's roads and it's massive buildings, not commercial stuff.
So it's kind of like, there's an old saying that if you're not a member of a chamber of commerce, are you even in business? And, in some ways for Saskatchewan, I would say on the industrial side, if you're not a member of SIMSA, the same applies. In fact, I would argue that that SIMSA is more effective than the Chamber of Commerce in some manners.
Well, for what we do, yes. I mean, when you think about the heavy industrial and mining sector, we're about bringing the buyers and sellers together. And it's not because, for example, at our event last week with Nutrien, they had over 60 people there, right? So they have the president of the potash division, but they've also got all the people who actually do the buying or the decisions on the buying. So you're getting to talk to the people who you need to talk to. So you get the figurehead who gets up there and delivers the report, which is wonderful. And if you've got a really high-end complaint, you can talk to them or a conversation. But in general, you want to talk to the people in the next level down or 2 down, right? You want to talk to the person that's doing the buying. And so we try to focus on getting those people in the room so you can sell something, because there's no sense trying to sell it to a person who has no priorities in the system.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about, I'm sure he won't mind, Jim Wilson and Wiltech.
Yes.
Because, Jim's business was primarily focused on the oil patch. It's a hydraulic specialist, but the oil patch, started really 10 years ago, took a big hit, and he started expanding locations into Saskatchewan and Regina.
Yep.
Servicing the industrial core there and the refinery and the mining sector. And, it took a big pivot into mining. And, that's an enormous part of the business now. I'm not sure if it's the majority, but it's a pretty good bet it is, and doing that was, recognizing that they needed to do a pivot and using SIMSA as part of that. I think that it's very important to their business strategy. Otherwise, he wouldn't be on your board.
Well, the being on the board thing, first for less an election, I have no say on that. So otherwise I wouldn't have put him in there. No, I'm kidding. He's a good guy. Man, it's a tough crowd here. No, so I tell people when they're interested in joining SIMSA or they have conversations with me about it, I tell them, if you can't make your membership fee back at one of our events, you're probably in the wrong business. Because if you can't sell, I mean, our fees at the low end are $500. At the high end, I think it's like $2,000 or $2,500. And to get up there, you have to be selling for $20 million a year, or $50 million. I mean, if you can't make back $500 and you've got the entire purchasing arm of Nutrien standing in a room for a day and to talk to you, there's some other issues to be addressed here. And so, that's what we look at on the mining side. And then the oil and gas side, we'll have a lot of the larger players are there. And then you can also, because the supply chains work well together and they support each other, there's also the people you need to work with are there, right? And sometimes we set up our own benefits program for our members because we found a lot of these little companies couldn't get health benefits. And to compete with a major mining company, for example, you needed to be able to, you couldn't do it on cash, but you could maybe do it on benefits. So we created a health benefits program. We basically mirrored Nutrien's and made it available to companies small as 3 employees. And now they can access phenomenal health benefits. And that's what we did. And we make it open to our members.
One of the things that we were talking about in those last months, as I recall, Eric, before the election last year was
before
the
that
labor issue.
Dark day.
The shortage of labor in the province. And I know we talked about it in the context of forestry up north. And I believe we were planning something around, a symposium to try to address ways of freeing up and attracting labor and so on. Just, I guess, where is that at as a top concern? It must still be a top concern where you have expansion of sectors from forestry to mining and so on. Now nuclear, you're going to have that labor issue. So where are things at with that now? And how should we think of all of that?
What we did is we do like we do with a lot of things. We just got started. So, because every great success story begins with, well, he started playing hockey when he was 3. Well, he sucked when he started playing hockey, but he still played, right? And nobody seems to look down on that. And they talk about their great successes, but they don't talk about how they started. So we started. There's a thought. And so what we did is we got together. We knew there was a bunch of elementary and high school teachers that were doing great work in getting science and technology, engineering, math, and into the classroom, right? So we pulled them in to get what they were thinking. And then we pulled in some of the major resource sector AHR people and community investment people. Then we pulled in some government people, and we pulled in some school board people, and we did a study on what the teachers need to be successful from the teachers, shared that out in advance, pulled everybody into a room, and then we had a conversation. And what it turns out that they really needed the most was the ability to talk to the mining companies directly.
Mm-hmm.
And just by having them in the same room and doing an event, we had the success on that one right to begin with. That was done.
And you
They
mean
were
young people, like
Yeah,
grade 12 age.
yeah, or even down to grade 4, grade 3
Okay.
kids, right? Like where
Right.
they're learning to build with their hands or get excited about design or changing or like a little balsa wood car. And so we did that, and we pulled it together, and we got some recommendations, and then we also found out there was some funding issues. Well, it turns out the teachers were scared to ask for, $500 to $1,000. And it wasn't until I think it was Julianne Riston from Nutrien got up on the stage and said, heck, that's less than the rounding error on my budgets. Ask for it. Ask for more. I mean, and the teachers didn't understand because they didn't have the conversations. What is possible, what the resource sector is willing to do to help and build. And so we got that conversation going. Then we found out what we needed was a hub. So we decided at that meeting, we're going to create a hub. So then we had another meeting we brought the group back. We did some background work, some more study resource, pulled it all together. We got the Deputy Minister of Education to come in. And we talked about, okay, we want to create a hub, a place where there's a one-stop shop. Teachers can go find information, find funding, find spare pieces of balsa wood or pallets to build silly things that they couldn't get before, and they were dumpster diving to get stuff, and we kind of figured out a way to do that. And then we're trying to decide how to do it, and then we sat there and looked at the table and went, well, the distance learning center is sitting over here, and they're already doing pieces like that sort of in the oil sector. And so we connected the two of them, and then we quietly back away from it. Now we're still involved to backfill it and fill it in and do whatever we need to. We got it up and running, and then there's a point though where our work is done. We got to get back to helping our members sell stuff, but we got that helped. But then if the industry education councils in Regina or Saskatoon, if they need help, we'll help them.
Right.
What do you need? Or there was this young man who did a marketing thing at the U of S, was trying to get some kids together to do some stuff and go speak at that, right, and help out with communications and marketing.
Right.
So we're just going to go to commercial here in a second, folks, for 30 seconds. If you have any comments, wherever you're watching from right now, if you comment on this link right now, it'll show up here, and assuming you're not a jerk, we'll bring it up and we can maybe ask a question or say something else here, but we'll be back in 30 seconds. For your well servicing needs in Southeast Saskatchewan and Southwest Manitoba, you need the General. That's General Well Servicing of Cardiff, Saskatchewan. They've got a fleet of double, triple rigs, pressure vessels, and lighting rentals ready to serve you. They can perform rig assist and frac assist operations as well. Call Kevin at 306-482-3244. That's Call the General at 306-482-3244. Yes, sir. All right, we're back, folks. And what I really want to talk about here, because this is kind of the big thing that Eric's been doing for quite a while now, is nuclear. So the conference I was at, they had a presentation. They had, I think it was Lisa McBride, who's the person from General Electric Vernova, Hitachi, who's the country lead for the reactor SaskPower has chosen. She spoke with Rhea Brown from SaskPower on the stage. This afternoon, there's another presentation from a U of R professor who's the SMR National Research Chair on SMR, or something to that effect. And nuclear is the big thing. And you can't swing a dead cat in Saskatchewan talking about nuclear and not have SIMSA come as part of a conversation. So, Eric, how did that come about?
We started a veterinary clinic for dead cats is what we did. And so when you swing dead cats, our name comes up now because that's what we do. Either that or maybe there was something else we did. So what did we do? We recognized early on that there was going to be billions of dollars spent in this province on nuclear power, and that it basically was going to be the same people that are doing the mining and oil and gas stuff that can end up doing the nuclear stuff. So as an association, we get involved. And so what do? Well, the first thing you do is you go out and you get some money from various agencies, because there's no money in this, right? Nobody's spending anything yet. And now we got to, so you have to go get some money, first of all, from some government agencies. And so Prairies Can was very helpful. Crown Investments was helpful. And they brought us, we got funding. We brought in Tom Kischuk, who used to be the president CEO of Mitsubishi Hitachi Power Systems, to go through the GE design and Westinghouse and some others and figure out what does it take to build a reactor, and of those pieces, what could be built in Saskatchewan. So that was the first 2 years of our work. And then we started sharing that information, right? And we also work with SAS Power, with Ria and Len Cluett, who's no longer there, who's now David Brock, I think, is in his spot. And Rupen was great, and Dan Irvin and Corey Atkinson moved around. And then Lisa McBride, the lady from GE you were mentioning, we work with Lisa a lot. She's one of the first people I met. And then with the Westinghouse folks, became very involved with them. And X Energy, we got an MOU with them. We became involved with the Organization of Canadian Nuclear Industries and the FNPA, and then and we just started sharing what we found out. What does it take to build one of these things? What can build locally? The next stage was, okay, we can build it all, but man, there's a lot of paperwork we figured out. Like the paperwork in nuclear is insane. And if somebody's looking to get a degree to get into laws is a business or a third career, maybe getting into nuclear power law would be a good idea. Maybe there's a thought. Anyway, so we hired. Now we have Grant Shirkus working here. Actually, there, and he used to be the vice president of market development and the chief engineer for Westinghouse. So he knows how to build a reactor, but he knows the paperwork, and that's what we're working on now. Is helping our members become accredited, learn, because the paperwork is insane. Tracking every ingot of metal into the shop, where it got done, who touched it, on what day, what happened to it, and to move it along so that if something ever goes wrong down the road, they can track it back to the, and then maybe that person did something else on that day. And where else did it go, right? So they can really track everything. And they also make sure nothing goes wrong and it stays strictly to design code.
How closely is that related to ISO 9000?
ISO 9001 is the baseline, is the bottom of it. We've applied for money from the federal government to get ISO 9001 accreditation for close to 100 of our members, actually, is the number we asked for. That's the baseline for anything nuclear power, is get that needs to be in place. Then if you want to work on stuff inside the reactor core with a pressure vessel and all that is, then you start getting into it's called an N stamp, a nuclear accreditation, because the nuclear power plant is basically a glorified coal plant where you got something that boils water or makes heat and steam, right? After that, it spins a turbine that's the same as a coal turbine. Maybe the steam's a little cooler and it's a little wetter, but it's still a steam turbine. And then there's a nice little electric generator on the back end, and then goes transmission. So all you're talking about really that's different in this whole process is, the tall pressure vessel, that little shiny steel thing inside of that big dome. That little room there is different, but the rest of it, it's just a power plant, and it's what we've been building here for years. And so we've been working on helping our members figure out the paperwork for that build.
Interesting. Eric, what would you say is top of mind for suppliers in the province right now? I mean, is it infrastructure? Is it federal policies? Is it what's really the buzz from them when you guys get together?
For nuclear or for everything?
Just for everything. Top of
for
mind
everything.
from some members, yeah.
Well, okay, there's a list. First of all, one thing about our membership that's a little different is that we are dependent on federal and provincial policies that impact our clients more than ourselves. Like if the mining sector gets squeezed, the mining companies get squeezed, we get crushed, right? We need them to be doing well, and then they spend money, then we do well, right? There's not too many federal and provincial policies that really impact the supply chain itself, right? And so on the policy side, I'm more concerned with your favorite topics of Bill C-59 and C-69 and all those wonderful things that just make your life glorious, right? We need those things to be, changed so that the sector does well and then our members do well. We want to know, for example, in the nuclear piece, though, let's move a little further along, some assurances, like when and how is this going to be built, right? What is the local spend number going to be on that thing? What are the targets? Like, I mean, we can't know, we can't guarantee it, but what are they thinking about, right? What do they think they'll purchase locally versus they will just get from somewhere else because it's a one-off thing that doesn't make sense, right? Payment terms is probably the next one. When interest rates, the past couple of years almost didn't exist, well, payment terms weren't such a big deal, right? You could afford to finance. You build something for somebody, you pay your staff in 2 weeks, and then you don't get paid for 30 or 60 or 90 days. It wasn't maybe such a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
But when interest rates became a reality again, and they went up to 4.5% base, and then the interest rate our members are paying is higher. Well, wait a minute, that turns out to be your entire profit margin just went poof if the terms go into 60, 90 days. And so you're like, well, why am I in business? I might as well just sell everything and put it in the bank and go to Vegas, right? I mean, and so that's an issue.
It's interesting you mentioned that, because I had a conversation not half an hour ago of someone who did exactly that. He retired when oil patch was still doing good. He actually he retired at 53, which is 3 years older than I am.
Wow.
And I kind of harassed him a bit about that, but he saw what was coming with that. And part of our discussion was that he said, some oil companies are asking for, a 20% cut in what vendors are paying or charging. That's like going to a service rig and say, yeah, we want a 20% cut, or a trucking company or whatever.
Well, yeah, and that kind of request is silly.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, you can't, when the initial negotiation goes on and the margins are negotiated down to 5%, maybe 10 with some hiding, and maybe 15 if you're extremely crafty at it, and all of a sudden they want a 20% cut, it's like, well, that's just over, right? And so my response is, sure, we'll do a 20% price cut, and we'll just deliver 20% less. There's no big deal. We can do that.
I guess the reason I brought this up here is that I have a significant story, which I'm probably going to run on Monday or Tuesday, about how there's a huge technological change in the oil patch right now, with the advent of these big multilaterals. And I've been talking about this for months, both on the Evan Bray show and on here and whatnot. And I've got the story about 98% done on my screen. And honestly, it's heartbreaking. I almost don't want to publish it, because there is going to be a world of pain. There is a world of pain happening right now in the oil industry from this technological change. And then compounding that with companies that are saying, no, we want to pay you less, make it happen. It's going to be absolutely brutal out there. And, I don't know how I deal with that, to be quite honest.
Well, we look at things this way. We're a fairly diverse supply chain, and sure, when the oil sector in the past few years kind of took a bit of a beating, and hopefully is coming back to life. In the meantime, the potash sector was doing quite, moving along, right?
Mm-hmm.
And uranium's now coming back, and then I look at defense spending. We haven't even talked about that. A lot of our members are doing work in the defense sector. Well, if you look at the defense spending forecasts, like if 5% of our GDP would get us to about $115 billion a year.
And we're currently spending about 20.
And by defense, you mean critical minerals?
Everything, right? And they can, so of that 5%, 2/3 of it could look like a tank, but the other third could look like the infrastructure to drive the tank on, or to support the people who are getting to the military base, or like could be roads and railroads and all that kind of stuff, right? And power plants that are required to for bases, all that kind of stuff, right? Well, 5% of, so we're at 115 billion. Well, Saskatchewan's typical share is 3.5% of that. So that's $4 billion a year. Okay, that's more than the mining sector spends in this province locally in a year, right? Defense can be bigger than mining.
But clarify what you mean a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, Eric, just for listeners on defense, because that's kind of a new category, if you like, in a way, right?
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Well, I think it's new for us now. We haven't really thought about it for 80 years.
How would you explain that, though, Eric?
Sorry.
The defense category in terms of its significance and what's really part of it, as you see.
Well, defense. So I mean, you've already got like Pammy and Humboldt, right? Was it prairie agriculture? Like, well, they're already doing armor plating on turning a case tracked 4-wheel drive tractor with treads to turn it into a minesweeper.
Wow.
Right.
Don't
And
need
so
those in Ukraine.
they took the cab. So you got your regular, you know, you're going to use my prop. You got your regular case tractor here, right? And you got your treads in the front and the back. Well, they turned the cab around and now the back end's the front, right? And then they changed the transfer case. So now you're going this way, armor plate the living heck out of the thing. And you've turned a massive case track into armor plate. You've got members who are building small pieces. You got Pro Metals. I think J&E's doing some stuff. There's a lot of companies out here that are quietly doing military stuff, because military stuff, a lot of it's built out of metal. Well, that's mining in the oil and gas sector. We build stuff out of metal. So there's stuff to be built. There's also some high-tech stuff going on over at Calian or at some other companies here in town that are doing military stuff. And if that increases to $4 billion, well, that number's real. I mean, it's now bigger than mining in this province. And so what does that mean? And that's if we go at 3.5%. Well, which is our normal piece of the pie. But we've got Moose Jaw here, and we've got the Moose Jaw Air Force Base, and we've got Dundurn, which I think is the largest munitions dump in the country. I mean, our 3.5% could actually be bigger than 3.5 then, right? So that's huge.
That's interesting, because in the States, of course, the whole critical minerals discussion is being framed around defense. And so at first I thought that's more what you were referring to, but you're talking about the actual nuts and bolts military.
And some of it is, and then the other thing they're looking at doing is, well, do we need to put, to have a northern, to protect the Arctic, which is something actually we're having a lot of conversations about in the office. You need a bunch of small modular reactors across northern Canada to have infrastructure and power to defend the northern border for North America, right? Not just us. And so, and you have to bring these, and then you can't just put an eVinci reactor, which is on the screen right now, in a building and put it there, because the building itself, the ambient temperature will hit 20 degrees Celsius. You think, well, big deal. Well, in the Arctic, it's a big deal because you're building it on permafrost. Now the building warms up and melts itself into the ground. And because the ground, it's warm, right? It's not hot, but it's warm. It's just warm a little bit. So you put it on stilts. Well, that works in the winter because the air can go on and blow underneath it, right? But in the summer, it still doesn't work. So you end up having to put the things on a barge, pull it up permanently, pull it up completely built, because you can't, there's nothing up there to build with, or not a road to get the things to build with to it. So it comes completely built on a barge with a little support building on the barge, 2 wires hanging off the side. You pull it up, dock it, put some rock around it. Now you put 1 wire to the little town, which is usually beside, or community, and the other wire over to the military installation. And then this thing powers both of them, and then it's completely prefabbed, and you could build that here.
I want to get back into nuclear a little bit.
Yeah.
In that, for instance, last November, I attended an event you held for Westinghouse. It was basically a symposium to establish a supply chain, and Westinghouse had went and talked to a few different companies. You've mentioned J&E, I think 5 times today so far. And they're always at the forefront of everything. They're one of Saskatchewan's most progressive, go out and get it companies. You explain who the various players are in the nuclear reactor space, because first of all, we got 3 sizes of reactors. I showed the micro reactor, the eVinci. We've got small modular. So those are basically, explain what a micro reactor is, a small reactor, and a large reactor. And I'll pull them up on screen as we're talking.
So the micro is generally 5 megawatts or less. That's like an eVinci, right? It's something for a small little town. It's something, they call it a nuclear battery. It's air cooled. It arrives fully fueled. I mean, you drop the thing off. This is really simplified. You basically drop the thing off on a pad, put a little building around it, and you got an extension cord coming out. You plug it in, pull the pin, and it runs for 8 years. At the end of 8 years, you shut it off, let it cool off for 2 months. You have another one kind of waiting right beside it. You swap them out, and you take the other one back, completely recycle the entire thing. It's a glorified battery, right? That's what it is. So now the SMR is up to 300 megawatts.
Wrong one. Sorry, hold on. There we go.
SMR. So there's the mock-up of the Westinghouse facility, and that's a little bigger now. So now you're up to about 300 megawatts. You could put them together. You could be 2 or 3 of them together or whatever in an area, or 4. I think they're doing it out in Ontario. 300 megawatts, now they're about the size of a coal power plant for output, right? And that's not by accident. It's so that when you plug that thing in, you don't have to rebuild your entire power grid, right? You got a 300 megawatt power line coming in. Well, you just unplug this one, you plug that one in, done, right? So there, right? They're kind of the same amount of power output. Now that one you need to fuel and refuel and things like that. They're not, you know, they're not quick and easy, and they're not as modular. Depending on who you are, GE's modules are large and they rely on big chunks. Westinghouse's modules are small. Every one of their modules fits on the back of a regular semi. And so
I found that was really interesting when they mentioned that.
Yeah. So Westinghouse pieces, you can build it a lot more locally and then ship it globally just by design. And then you've got Cameco that owns them, and they're a very good friendly company to our province, let's put it that way. So, you know, there's a good thing. And then the other thing is the small ones from Westinghouse, a lot of those parts can be used in the larger one, which is on the screen right now, the AP1000. Now, the large reactors, those are the ones we typically think about, right? I mean, you could have 2 or 3 of those things and you power the entire province, right? Done.
Yeah, the AP1000 is actually 1,200 megawatts.
Yeah, so it's 1,200. So that, you mean, you know, 2, maybe 3 of those in the province is taken care of. The problem, though, with that then is redundancy. If you have to shut things down or there's an emergency, you need to be able to have this backup plan. Well, you know, if you've only got 2 of those running in the first place, you need a third one for backup. So that's where the interconnection between provinces becomes critical. So that if you shut one off here, like maybe Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta become one big grid, so that we can have big ones that are cheaper in the end. And if they shut one off, well, we can backfill it. And or if we shut one off, they can backfill it, or we can, you know, there's interconnectivity.
So those are the 3 sizes, but we also have 3 players here. So this is Westinghouse.
Yeah.
This is General Electric, Vernova, Hitachi. And then, you know, talk about the third player we haven't talked about yet.
Our friends at CANDU. So here's another thing. There's actually a 4th one. There's X Energy out there kicking around. So on the CANDU side, it's a different design. The fuel is much, some people refer to the CANDU reactors as dirt burners because they use a very low, like it's closest to the raw uranium as you can almost get and still work in a reactor, right? There's not a lot of improvement to the fuel done by design. Now it's a different internal design, but it's still a reactor in the end. You know, there's a lot of work in CANDU. We've had the head of purchasing for Atkins Realis, which is the CANDU. They bought the CANDU technology. Atkins Realis can be an engineering firm or it can be CANDU. There's a line up the middle of that company. So we've had the people out here meeting our members, talking about helping them build CANDU refurbishments in Ontario. There's over $1 billion of the piping work that needs to get done, and they were looking for vendors here. Well, our guys do piping, right? I mean, it's what we do. We do metal pipes. I mean, and so there's a ton of work to be done right now in Ontario on CANDU refurbishments. And then down the road, if they build CANDU more there's work potentially. There's also stuff, and I think they were looking at CANDU up in Fort Mac. They may also be looking at obviously other things there, obviously with the Westinghouse side too.
So where I'm going with that is that you're working with all 3 of the big players, and also all 3 scale, aren't you?
Yes, and there's actually another player we're working with. We work with Rolls-Royce. Now, which was a neat thing because I finally got some Rolls-Royce swag. I went home with my kids and I had a little Bluetooth speaker. It had the big Rolls-Royce logo on it. And I said, look what I got today. And they go, did you get a car? No, damn it. I just got a reactor. And so, but, you know, they've been making reactors for the British military, for their fleets for decades. And they kind of came above water like a submarine and went, hey, we can build these too. And so now you've got Rolls-Royce out there going, well, we can build maybe just a bit bigger, kind of halfway between the micro and the modular, because some places like certain mines need just a little bigger. It's not quite, the micro won't quite cut it. We don't need 300 megawatts. Well, maybe the Jansen Potash mine could use one by themselves, but the rest of them are not that level, right? They're not that big.
We're just going to go to a break here for a second, folks. So back in 30 seconds.
Yep.
There's a reason that HG Jack has dominated Saskatchewan's oil patch. That's because that distinctive curved walking beam reduces energy consumption by about 25%. That means 25% less power bills, 25% less carbon tax. That's a big difference. And it's available exclusively from Grimes Sales and Service, Batman, Saskatchewan. So, folks, we got a little bit less than 20 minutes left here. And if you have any questions or comments, please jump in here. We're going to fill out our time. Then we all got to turn into pumpkins at that time.
Yeah. So that Grimes, there's a great thing that they had you just played there, right? You've got a pump jack. What if we just bend the arm just a little, right? And there's a 20% reduction?
25%, yeah.
25, like, how simple is that?
Yeah.
And how huge a savings is that?
Where do you guys see the nuclear conversation going from the supplier's perspective, Eric? I mean, any formal preference in terms of the path and or the model and implications of any of those, or either of those on jobs for, in the supplier's context? Have you taken a formal stance on that at any point in terms of, as I say, which model and why? And just how can we understand what the switch to nuclear will mean for the suppliers, on the suppliers side of the conversation, jobs wise and otherwise in the province as we move to that?
Well, if it's a $20 or $25 billion spend, right, whatever that number is in the end, I mean, for whoever it gets to be over the next few years, that's a lot of money and a lot of time and a lot of jobs and a lot of ongoing employment too, because these things get built and then they run for 50 to 100 years. And so it's good career work. SAS Power is lined up with GE because they want to follow in the footsteps of the piece in Ontario and let them de-risk it. Because when you're modular, I mean, think of it this way. If you priced an F-150 based on the price of building the first one and the factory to build it, the price of that truck is obscene, right? And that's the first of a kind build in a nuclear reactor, sort of, right? It's like the first one's got a whole bunch of extra costs tied to it. The second one, less extra cost. The third one's less extra cost. Fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, eighth, ninth extra cost. Well, then the price keeps coming down because then actually become modular. The first one's not modular. The first one's factory built, but it's not modular. The second, third, fourth, fifth, eighth one. Okay, so the prices come down. So then when we look at it, we go, where is the modular being built? That hasn't really clarified yet. Maybe the first one's built at a factory somewhere else just because they just need to control it and get it done. And that's understandable. But we need to see where is it, who's going to build what where? That's the one we care about. Like, is it GE is going to build something here? Is it Westinghouse is going to build something? Is Rolls-Royce magically come from Europe here? I don't know. So it depends who lands here. And then the other part of that discussion is, well, then, so they're here, but okay, what one can we build for the world? I don't want to just build, nobody wants to set up a factory just to build 2 reactors. I mean, that's not a good business model. So what you need is is the factory that comes here or the company we're working for, does it have a global reach? Can we build stuff for the world? Maybe we don't build pressure vessels because a GE pressure vessel fully loaded when it arrives weighs 600 tons. That's kind of heavy, right? So, and if you set up a factory for that, well, you're going to build like 1 or 2 a year, like, yay, there's not much room to work. So that's not a lot of work. So you got to look at all the other stuff around it. Like the turbine business might be the business to get into. Because then you could build turbines for coal, you could build turbines for nuclear, you could build turbines for natural gas. There's not a turbine manufacturer in North America. There's probably the business to be in, frankly. Then who cares what they build globally? We're going to build turbines. And there's another issue. So it's kind of all up in the air until the dust settles. Those are our priorities. And then the winner is, and we'll see where they line up, I guess.
Okay, I'm going to play a little bit of devil's advocate here because
not you.
I've been following, not just the Saskatchewan nuclear scene, but what's been going on in other places in the world. And all these companies are vying against each other, particularly GE versus Westinghouse.
Yeah.
And Poland, for instance, they're planning on building 24 of these SMRs.
Yeah.
And they plan on building them a lot quicker than we are. Like they're going to be hitting the dirt here pretty soon. In fact, they may build 3 times as much as Saskatchewan and maybe 4 times as much as Saskatchewan and Ontario combined.
Yeah.
Which to me says that if you're going to build a supply chain anywhere, you want to build it near Warsaw as opposed to, say, Saskatoon.
Yeah.
Because and ship it in here because they're going to be buying a lot more. They're going to be pumping them out like sausages, as Khrushchev said about missiles.
Yeah.
And, in all these different places, Westinghouse goes here and Westinghouse goes there and GE goes here and GE goes there. And, today they had a GE person here and they all talk a game about we're all going to build local and we're all going to build modular and we're all going to build for the rest of the world here. But here is everywhere they go.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how is that going to play out? Especially since, even if right now they said, well, we're going to build 2 GEs, maybe more, but 2. Okay.
Yeah.
When the announcement was first made 3 years ago, this was said up to 4. And then he said, well, maybe up to 9, I don't know. And then the premier started talking about, well, maybe we'll build big reactors. And he was very clearly hinting at the Westinghouse ones. He was at an event in Saskatoon here at the end of July, which I attended and videoed.
Yeah.
I haven't had a chance to post that video yet, but he was on stage with the president of Cameco and the president of Westinghouse.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how do we, especially as a small player, a small jurisdiction of 1.25 million people, how do we get a chunk of that pie when all these other places like Estonia and Poland and Tennessee Valley Authority, they're all looking for part of that modular pie? How do we get a chunk of it?
Well, the first thing you do is accept what you just said as true, right? Realize that there's going to be somebody like me, believe it or not, somewhere else in the world demanding that whoever's building something there gets built locally, right? I exist in other places. Now, they don't all look like me, but some of them, well, maybe they do. But anyway, so there's this whole thing, right? And so you got to accept that, yeah, they're going to try to build local for what they're doing here. Now, there's certain pieces that are a little more key and a little less production run. And so you go, well, wait a minute, what are the parts that I could build locally that others couldn't? You have to think this through now, right? Well, the concrete's going to be local, right? You're not going to, you got to do that there.
Yeah, that was mentioned this morning.
I said concrete has to be local. The hole digging has to be local. So the only thing that doesn't have to be local, the few things there's basically that big pressure vessel and some of the piping and the valves and fittings that go around it, which are a lot, and they're technically pretty high-tech stuff. So you can look at that. Well, maybe we're going to focus on, we're going to be the place that makes nuclear pumps for the world, right? And it seems ridiculous, but you could get that focused, right? You can get focused in on a specific line of products, right? Then or like I said, remember, there's only this pressure, the component that does the water boiling is everybody gets excited about that, but that may only be 25% of the whole project, including the fuel within that, by the way. The rest of it's over here, right? It's that turbine, it's the generator, it's the control building, and then it's all the wiring that comes out of the bloody thing, which we could already build here. So
are we looking at basically, like, for instance, the F-35, which was a consortium of what's now well over a dozen countries. Originally, I think it was 8.
Yeah.
And if you bought into this consortium, you were going to get some of it. So, for instance, Canada's had like $2 or $3 billion worth of components from F-35s bought by everyone from Israel to Denmark and Norway. And we still haven't even taken delivery of our first one, but we are already seeing the benefits from some modules of that plane coming out of Canada, and some comes out of Denmark, comes out of Norway and UK and everyone else, and it's a global supply chain. Is that what GE and Westinghouse are doing? Is that they're saying, okay, we're going to make this widget in Saskatoon because hopefully SaskPower buys this, and we're going to make this big chunk in Toronto, and we're going to make this in the wiring harnesses or whatever out of Poland because we want to spread it around a little bit so we can get business everywhere.
I haven't heard anything. I haven't heard that. How about that? What I can say is that we've heard statements that would support that concept of, at some point or other, when there's a global market that big, and a company's got to deliver so many of these units, and they got to build supply chains, they're going to go, wait a minute, we need global preferred suppliers, not local for certain pieces, right?
Mhm.
And so for certain pieces, it makes sense from a business sense. If I was, if I was Westinghouse, I would go, well, yeah, wait a minute, I got to ship these things all over the world, so I'm going to build that piece there, build that there, and that there. I'll make sure it gets spread around to everybody, and make sure I'm not too dependent on one region, because hey, every now and then one country invades another country, and I can't be subject to that little game where a government changes. And so I want to make sure I got a couple of duplicates, right? So you get some backups and some little. So I'm not going to do all of that there. I'm going to be able to do a third and a third and a third, or whatever it is. And so I think, but it just have to be cognitive that things are going on more to a global level.
Yeah.
Got a question here from Brian Crossman. He said, referring to the length and time of approval process, he said, this is one of the biggest problems of anything in Canada.
Yeah.
What's your opinion?
So we, in our pre-budget submission to the federal government, we sent it August 1st. One of the very things in there was we asked for money for, we talked about earlier, for the ISO 9001 thing and all that. But it was also making the nuclear regulatory process change it so that things were consecutive, not concurrent. So what's going on right now? You get this permit, then you get this one, then you get this one, then you get this one, and then you can't move on to this one until this one's done, and then this one. And so it takes like 8 years or something, whatever it is, right?
At least.
Well, but the risk is all on the owner, right? It's no risk to the government. So why can't we do them all together, right? And if the company feels confident in the whole thing, or they're determined to have made a decision, we'll do all four of them at the same time. You can't progress until they're all done. Don't change that, but at least let that 8 years get compressed down to 2, right? Let them all run concurrently. Okay, you got them all done. Okay, now you can move forward. The risk is on the proponent, right? And so let them knock them all out. And then if these things are truly modular, why do you have to permit every single bloody part of this thing every time you go to build one? It's like you don't have to get the safety approval on every F-150 coming off the line. You get the approval on the design, but you don't have to tear apart the engineering of each individual truck, right? The brakes are certified, but you don't have to go through everything every time.
Has there been any movement on that, Eric? And I have one follow-up to that. I mean, it's a great submission, but have you heard anything back?
On that, other than thank you, we received it, we'll consider it? No. It is early. And the budget's November 4th? And the House of Commons is just starting to move back into business again. And it's a new government. So
just on that, and I know time is running out here, but on the major projects list, we saw the first tranche come out, was it 2 weeks ago? Saskatchewan was a little bit disappointed because there was no mention or even allusion, as far as I can recall, to the nuclear side of things.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have one project, as you know, foreign, which is great, and that's fine. But I think there had maybe been hope around some others, as I say, particularly in the nuclear space, and some disappointment about the fact it wasn't. So I guess thoughts on that, but really within the Saskatchewan context and major projects. Is it really, has anything fundamentally changed? I mean, you talked earlier about C69 and all this, and just to Brian's question about the approval process and everything else. I mean, it's all great, talk, foreign, except foreign was being built anyway. How should we see this, and how does SIMSA see this? Are they a bit disheartened? Are you a bit disheartened by, it's being maybe more talk, not enough action? No,
I'm pretty confident in the whole thing. The next list should come out sometime between Thanksgiving and Grey Cup, round 2. Round 1, everything on round 1 was already getting built, right? Everything was moving. It's round 2. That's where things start to get different. Okay. And that's where you start to get into things that didn't exist. Like a next gen uranium mine would probably be kind of a concept that would land on the next one. Maybe we put a request in for some investment at Healy Liquefaction down in the southwest. That's probably a little further down the pipe. The port at Churchill, holy crap, if that thing goes ahead, that's a ton of work for our guys. I mean, that's a road, a railroad, and a pipeline that go across the entire province of Manitoba and on muskeg. So it's going to be the biggest gravel and earth moving contest you've ever seen. So there's a lot of work. And then I look at Danielle Smith. and Premier Mo, put them together. Historically, in the past few years, they haven't been exactly the best friends of the federal government, right? There's been a bit of a tension there, let's say that. Well, all of a sudden now you're seeing Danielle Smith going, there seems to be this happiness. So I'm going to take that and go, and Scott Moe, I look at both of them and going, okay, they're not pushovers. Like, they don't let the federal government off the hook. So I take confidence in going, well, they seem to be happy. And when I was at the First Ministers Conference, I was able to go to that for a while and participate. Like, there was a genuine camaraderie between the federal government and the provincial leaders and the provincial leaders with each other. Like, they all seem to be.
All right. I wanted to ask about this.
The only thing I would add to that is just, cautious skepticism, right? Because I think while you're waiting for projects for your provinces to potentially become realities, you obviously you want one wants that. On the other hand, look at canola and the complexity. Look at some of the status quo that just remains the same. Doesn't mean you have to be, super negative all the time, but you still have to kind of reassess and assess where things are actually at. And we'll see, like with this major projects, but that's a big one though, because it can't just continue to be, let's all be friends and you're still parked. That's the concern.
So our role is to call balls and strikes at SIMSA, right? Our role is to say, that's good, that's not good, but here's why, but fair, right? Here's why we don't think it's good, and here's what could be changed. Not just automatic poo-pooing out because somebody said it. Yeah. Call balls and strikes, be fair, be productive. You got to work. We'll work together. They seem to be, like I got sent earlier. There's investments in things that build a country, in industrial projects and in business, as opposed to an ideology, right? And so with that going ahead, I think all the provinces, not all, but there's a lot of, at least something that people can all grasp to and work together. And so far it's heading in that direction. And we hold people accountable, obviously, and keep an eye on things, keep asking, going to all the, meetings. But I mean, heck, I've seen more MPs in the past, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 months than I've seen in my entire life. And members of parliament and cabinet ministers and meetings with secretary of this or that. Like, they're doing all the things that signal the right activity. The budget will be the big telltale. Like, is it in there to do it? And when you say austerity budget, I'm thinking there's going to be cuts in some stuff and investments in others, and where they're over budget and there's a deficit, well, I think at least it's an investment to make money in the future. So far, that's what it seems to be going towards. And everybody they've talked to is saying the same thing, but we'll see, right?
One of the last things I wanted to ask you about here, and Bronwyn's already touched on this, is the National Post had a story just a couple of days ago saying Scott Moe got his groove back, and it really talked about basically playing nicey nice with the feds. And as everyone here knows, and especially Bronwyn, the way to run for Saskatchewan, or run for the leadership of Saskatchewan, is you run against Ottawa. I mean, that's been the playbook since probably Tommy Douglas. And there's been more positive stuff I've heard from my end and from talking to some of the players in the last few months with this current Liberal government than I've seen in over a decade. Yeah. And is something really going on here, or, like you said, calling balls and strikes? Is this just a bunch of BS?
No, I think there is. I mean, first, you said it yourself. To get reelected in Saskatchewan, you need run against the feds. That's a policy, or maybe a method. How about that, right? Well, I'm assuming Mr. Moe understands that. And even with that in the back of his mind, he still goes, yeah, but you know what? I think this one, and you've seen Danielle Smith doing the same thing, right? And I look at those two and I go together, and you go, they're both historically not the biggest fans of the federal government. They're both going, yeah, I think this is going to work. And so I take it from that, and from my conversations, like I've had direct conversations with a lot of cabinet, and I even talked to Kearney face to face. That never happened with the previous government, that's for sure.
The only thing is, I would say is, that as long as the fundamentals actually start to shift. And until this point, they haven't. The only thing that's changed was the carbon tax. That was, to win. So good. That was productive and helped economically. But I always bristled at the characterization of running against the feds, because it's really running for the province. The point is, and we talked about ideology, when you get, what's driven the policies of the federal government have been ideology on energy and the economy. I mean, that's what's driven them is ideology. And we've only been left to respond. I mean, someone pointed out, I think it was Jason LeBlanc the other day on Facebook, was saying, those policies have led to recession. They have. And one hopes, of course, that team playing will lead to projects but the fundamentals of, for example, the approvals process is still such a harness compared to, as you pointed out, Brian, Poland and their approach, that we have to continue to say it and not be portrayed as just being negative if we do, because recession will result if we don't. So that, I think, is, it just remains to be seen. But it really, seriously, we should have you back by December, because if we're still talking about, it's really positive that people are meeting and talking and meeting and talking, and people have met with you more than you've, and all that. If that's still happening, and the project list isn't, and there aren't some of the fundamentals that are taken away, right? Like the approvals process.
We're all going to turn into pumpkins here. So Eric, just to you to wrap up, and we will get you, hopefully we can get you as a regular or semi-regular on here.
Well, my doctor liked to see me more regular too, so that's a good thing.
Oversight proctologist.
No, well, actually both actually come to think of it. No, let's I mean, we'll see what happens in the budget. Cautiously optimistic is the best way to put it. And and tell you what, if things aren't there, there's going to be a lot of really mad people, because they're going to feel like they were duped, and that will be bad. And I've
happened before.
And that's but no, I feel cautiously optimistic. Everything seems to be falling in place, so we'll see where it goes, and hopefully it does, and work together to get to that. Work together to enable them to say yes to everything. So that's the best we can do.
Well, thank you very much, folks. We got to wrap it up here because Eric's got to go, and so do I. So we'll see you in a couple weeks. Go. Thank you.
See you guys.
See you.
Thank you, Eric.
Bye, Robin.